Scheme the language. As I've said before, with functional programming languages, we're going to encapsulate some code or a function, and it's going to evaluate, pull in some variables, calculate, evaluate, and spit the sucker back out. And remember, this is more of a mathematical application than it was graphics. I know I've said that plenty of times before. And that's very different again than from what you're used to from the other languages of procedural, which really is not worried about returning a value in some of the procedural languages, that they all do, but still, that's not the focus of it. Whereas object-oriented is more focused on objects as data, which I'm sure has some procedure on it. So notice all of the languages that you have and been through really have the different paradigms in it of functional. Now you're going to start seeing it more. You may not have realized that before, of procedural, of object-oriented. A lot of them are built off of one another, and Scheme was one of the first ones, pure Scheme, which again, we're not exactly playing with, but a lot of features are. So when you're looking at the code, you're used to procedural with functions and step-by-step, which again, C++ and Java have, so it looks familiar. Object-oriented, which not every programming language has, but most of them that you've used so far do. But we're going to start seeing some Scheme code. But what I wanted to show you first is very similar to Python. There is an interpreter side to the Scheme that we have built into our Linux systems. And that is GSI for Gambit, and it's MZ Scheme for another server and other types of flavors of Scheme. I'll spit it out here in a second. There's also the batch mode, and I'm going to show you mostly the batch mode. But I wanted to show you right off the bat is that, again, Scheme is meant to evaluate and spit back an answer. So I'm going to do this right from the notes here. So I'm going to scroll down here, and you're going to see the exact same thing. If I were to give it some very, very simple equations, if you want to do it, it's going to do some of them. And notice I said some of them because that's not truly the syntax that it's expecting, but if it's that simple, it's going to return that value back out. The first one that I know I love is my Boolean here, my true and false. True and false in Scheme are pound T, pound F. So if I were to put that in there, pound T, it's going to instantly respond in interpreter mode as pound T because that's true. But there's a couple other ones that get kind of interesting. It can do integer division in your interpretive mode. 21 divided by 7 is 3, of course. 5 and 3 gives you, well, 5 thirds? Yeah. Anyway, so notice it'll do some of them, and then string, it'll actually do that as well. So notice I'm also going over some of the data types for you real quick. There's one that doesn't, and I'm going to show you how we fix that in a minute, but it's going to be using the original syntax that we're going to be getting used to. I'm just going to type in 4 like it says there, and 4 spits back out. Let me show you the one it probably won't do. 5 to 2.5, and as you know, it should come up 2, and it gives you an error. With float, as you know, it gets a little bit more complicated, but let me show you another way that we're going to do it, and this is the real syntax of what we would use to out of the interpreter mode. We'd have division, the operator first, then we have 5 and 2. Same exact thing. Well, that's true. Let me give you another one. 3.14. Oh, see, I've got to get division first. And then 3.14. Oh, son of a gun. By the way, notice, you're going to see this in a video later on. I almost goofed up because I didn't put the parenthesis behind it. That's one bad thing about interpretive. If you screw up, you can't go back exactly. There you go. Now we get a float. But notice, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? How it did I was hoping when we did 5 divided by 2 it would give me 2.5. It didn't. But as soon as I started giving a little bit more complex stuff, then it did the calculation. It's about to double check me, but I think that's right. So, or at least, wow, it's a really long number. So I wanted to show you not just the interpreter mode, but this is, again, the Scheme is meant to accept a couple of values, spit out the answer, and it's called an evaluation. And that's the overall setup. It's very similar to what you're used to in our normal mathematical functions. We insert values into it, and then it solves it and spits us an answer back out. It's the exact same idea. This is cut and dry. This is very cut and dry. Well, and I'll leave it at that. But you're also being introduced to the first time to our syntax that we're going to be mostly using in the batch mode version of Scheme.